world. This is the Fan and Fanatic Podcast. I'm Parker Grelecki, aka the Fan and Fanatic, and with me as always is my broadcast partner,
Dad,
aka Ryan Grelecki. I've got a passion for all things sports. So, on the Fan and Fanatic Podcast, we'll talk to anyone and everyone from all over the world of sports who will sit still long enough to answer my questions.
that's right. Now, as a result of complications from severe brain damage at birth, unfortunately, Parker will never be able to physically play sports, but that cannot and has never stopped him from loving everything about sports and dreaming of a career in broadcasting. So each of our guests graciously gives of their time on this podcast to invest in Parker's dream and to help him be part of the sports world he loves so dearly.
Now, let's play ball! Welcome back to the Fan and Fanatic Podcast. It's my absolute honor to introduce my guest, Mr. Ottie Stein. Ottie, why don't you tell the folks a little bit about here, Ottie? Let's start with some personal questions. Are you ready? Okay, question 1. Where did you go to high school?
I went to high school at Russellville High School. It's in the northwest corner of Alabama.
I assume that's in Russellville, Alabama?
That's right. I live in a place I live actually between Russellville and Muscle Shoals, and it's called Littleville, Alabama.
Well, Muscle Shoals, they got the swampland. Have you ever been to the Muscle Shoals swamplands?
They have the Swampers.
Have you ever been to the Swamper? Yeah. Have you ever seen the Swampers?
Oh yes, we've seen the Swampers and friends with some of them.
Can I get into a little? Can I dig deeper into that? What are Swampers exactly?
Swampers were the studio musicians at Fame Recording Studio.
Nice.
And they later left Fame and went across town, and they founded Muscle Shoals Sound.
Wow.
And Muscle Shoals Sound recorded Leonard Skinner, Aretha Franklin. I can't tell you the number of people. The Rolling Stones that they recorded in this little town. These 2 recording studios in this little town had all kinds of people coming down here to get the sound. The wall of sound is what they called it.
May she rest in peace, Aretha Franklin.
That's right. That's right.
Where did you go to college?
I went to college. I started out at the University of North Alabama.
Go Lions.
And that's in Florence, Alabama, which is next to Muscle Shoals. And it's a unique situation there because it's called the Quad Cities. You have Muscle Shoals, Florence, Tuscumbia, and Sheffield, all in one area.
So go ahead.
And it makes it one big town, but it's actually 4 small towns.
So you were a Lion before you were a Crimson Tide. That's interesting.
That's right. The head coach of the Lions was Mickey Andrews.
No way.
Mickey gained fame down at Florida
State.
Oh,
here we go.
So yeah, my dad's a Florida State fan. His dad, my grandfather, has been a booster club, has been going to games since 1975.
Since before Bobby Bowden.
1975, right?
Right.
Probably. Granddad's been going to Florida State games since probably 1968.
Oh, 68. Okay.
Wow, that's 7 years before I graduated from high school.
Okay, so next question. What drew you to Alabama?
What was that question again?
What drew you to Alabama?
What year?
What drew you?
Yeah, why'd you go to Alabama?
Yeah, why'd you go to Alabama?
To go to University of Alabama?
Well, I can tell you the political story. I could tell you the real story.
And okay, yeah. And then Okay, let me hear the real story, and after that, I have another question.
Well, the real story is in the Gulf South Conference in those days, Austin P University was the doormat. They hadn't won a game in 3 or 4 years, and we were supposed to be good that year, and we went up and got beat by Austin P. Well, Coach Andrews brought everybody back, and Sunday morning we started practicing, and it was a real tough practice. And at night they pulled vans down there so that the university vans, so we'd have van lights.
Wow.
And it made a lot of the officials mad, the university officials. And they asked several people in to testify. And when I didn't testify, I refused to testify. Coach Andrews, they asked me, what would make you happy? Where do you want to go? I said, I've always dreamed of going to Alabama.
Wow.
And he called Coach Bryant, and Coach Johnny Long, the trainer, called Coach Goosetree. And they said, get into the university over Christmas. You try to get in for the spring session. Come see us. And it wasn't any problem for me to get in, but it was hard for me to believe that I was at Alabama when I got to Alabama.
Did you grow up going to college football games?
Yes, I did.
What team?
I didn't go to a lot, but always.
Oh, can you say that again? You're breaking up. Can you say that again?
I didn't go to a lot of games, John, but I probably went to 1 or 2 a year, and I went to a couple of Auburn games too.
War Eagle.
War Eagle.
Wait, who's John, by the way? Oh, Parker. My name's Parker, by the way.
Oh, okay, Parker. I misread you.
No problem. Anywho,
I think I can't see good with my eyes with my glasses on this close. So,
hey, Parker. Ottie's
what
a friend of one of your other guests. Why don't you ask him a little bit about that?
Wait. Oh, wait. Hold on. Wait. Actually, wait. So I missed where you said you went to. Who was your Like I said, I asked you where you went to college. If you went to any college football games, and I don't know if I heard what team you said you went to games for. What team? Like, who did you support back in the day?
I supported Alabama.
So you went to the Alabama games.
I grew up worshiping Alabama. Everybody in my family worshiped Alabama at the time. We were all Alabama fans.
So like I mentioned before we hit the air, you're good friends with one of my good friends, Mr. J.W. Hodge. Would you like to talk about Mr. J.W. Hodge and how your paths crossed?
JW grew up with my wife, and I forgot where me and JW met, but it seemed like we've always been friends. I mean, from early on, before we went to college, we were friends. And then JW was a punter for the football team, and I was a manager for the football team. I started out as a manager, and we were just friends. We would do things together, and we were a fraternity of 2 people.
On a related note, so as you know, Big Al is like the infamous mascot for Alabama. But I've heard a lot of, and some schools they have a female for the male mascot. Like Florida has Albert and Alberta, and and then anyway, the reason why I bring this up is I've heard through the Alabama grapevine that there was once a female pachyderm who went by the name of Big Alice. Is this true? Or is this just an Alabama myth?
I can't answer that question, Parker.
Okay.
I imagine there's one somewhere.
So you went to Bama as a football manager. Do tell, what does the manager do?
Well, at Alabama, at the time, it's kind of hard for these. It's kind of hard for people to understand because, like at Alabama now, they have 32, 34 managers.
Wow.
Back then, we had 8 managers. And when I was in high school, I tried everything to get on at Alabama, but there was just no positions, and if one position opens, you always have 50, 60, 70 people apply for that position. And when I got on as a freshman, I took care of handing out baskets, and the baskets had the players' practice clothes in them. And each basket had a number. And if the player was number 40, the basket was number 40. And we had a guy that washed all the clothes. And in the mornings, we'd go over there and put everything back in the baskets. And when I became a sophomore, I started with setting up practice fields and helping one of the coaches out at practice. I worked with D. Powell, the offensive line coach, and he gave me a stick that was like 36 inches long. 36 inches long. It was a broomstick that was cut off. And when the line at Alabama lined up, whether it was at practice or at game, he would put that stick in between each player, and it had to be perfect. And if you look
Ottie,
at, am I
go
breaking?
ahead. I'm
Go
so
ahead,
sorry.
Ottie. No, you're fine. Go ahead.
He would put the stick in between each player, and they had to be perfect. And if you look at the old film of Alabama when Coach Bryant was a coach, when the offensive line break the huddle and they go line up, it's almost perfect every time. And when I was a junior, late in my junior year, I got selected to be head manager. And the head manager went up and worked with Coach Bryant exclusively. And he was basically a gopher for Coach Bryant. I handle all the player tickets, the hotel keys. A lot of the hotel keys I handed out when we did a traveling game, and I counted the players on the bus. And whatever Coach Bryant wanted you to do, you did.
Nice. So there are 2 people who from the Alabama nation that I like know and love. I'm not a Bama fan though, but like my whole family are Auburn fans. But like I said, there are 2 people from the Alabama nation that I'm completely like fascinated with: Mr. Tony Giles and Mr. Eli Gold. Do you know any of those people?
I know them, but I don't know them as good as you might know them.
So yeah, Mr. Tony Giles, you might recognize him as the voice of Bryant-Denny Stadium. He's the guy that says,
right.
"First down, Alabama." And then
That's
Eli
right.
Gold. Eli Gold is the radio announcer for the Crimson Tide.
That's
and
right.
I'm gonna give you a little bit of a backstory, and then I'm gonna jump into another question. So, like I said, we're Auburn. My mom's side of the family are Auburn fans, but they live in Georgia, so they hate they hate University of Georgia more than they, I'm not, but more than they hate. No,
Dislike,
hate is a strong word.
dislike.
Alabama. Anywho,
Well, Alabama hates Tennessee more than they hate Auburn.
anyhow, so
The fans, the people of this state, they are the big Alabama Auburn rivalry. But when it comes down to the players and coaches, for some reason, Tennessee is our arch rival.
Huh.
And when it comes to Auburn, Georgia is their arch rival.
Interesting.
And Sharon and I, we were in the reconditioning business, and we did Auburn's helmets for a long time. So we're big fans of Auburn too.
War Eagle.
War Eagle.
So anyhow, like I said, so my grandparents, over their dead bodies, would they visit would they visit Bryant-Denny Stadium? But I have a goal for myself to visit as many stadiums in my lifetime as possible. So last year I was fortunate. So my grandfather has a friend who is who's a friend slash colleague, and by colleague I mean like workmate, who's a Texas A&M fan, and so we put our feelers out to the guy, and it turns out he had tickets to the Texas A&M Alabama game last year, and I got to go to Bryant-Denny Stadium. But the one thing I was hoping to escape with, during this trip, was meeting the pachyderm of the hour, Mr. Big Al himself. So the only way I figured the only way I could do I could have do that is if I go to Elephant Stomp. You know what Elephant Stomp is? That big like pre-game Saturday pep rally, like where they have that. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
So the fans in front. So I think that some people heard me, like the people around me heard me talk about it, and they let me cut in front of them. And sure enough, I met Mr. Big Al. I think I have a picture here. Oh, okay. I'll show you the pictures when we're off the air.
That sounds great.
Do you have So yeah, we didn't stay the whole game though, because Tuscaloosa traffic on an Alabama game day.
Oh, that's terrible.
So yeah. Anyhow,
you better have good tennis.
So do you have? Wait, say that again.
You better have good tennis shoes on game day, because you got to walk a long way.
Yeah. So, do you have a favorite memory or story from Bear Bryant? May he rest in peace, the great one. But like I said, do you have a favorite memory or story from Bear Bryant?
I have my personal favorite story is Coach Bryant called me in there one day, and he said, "Ottie," he said, we have an opportunity to play a TV game, but when we do, we have LSU the following week. And he said, LSU, to win that game, if we use all of our weapons and LSU sees them, we might have a hard time beating LSU. So the question is, do we go for the TV game and the exposure and the money? Or do we turn it down and have a better chance of beating LSU? And I said, Coach, I think we ought to go for the money and the exposure. And I think we're good enough to beat LSU no matter what. And he said, thank you for your opinion. Would you call Major Ogilvy and EJ Jr., the two captains? I want to ask them the same thing. And that was a big honor for me.
Wow.
For him to ask me what he was going to ask the team captains.
Can I also apologize? I thought until now your name was pronounced Ottie, so that sparks a question. Is Ottie short for anything?
No, it's a nickname. My real name is Alan Stein, but everybody in the world calls me Ottie.
Parker, I got to follow up on that last story. What did Coach Bryant ultimately decide to do?
Yeah, what did they do?
We went for the TV game, and we beat LSU 3-0. It was as close a game as you could. It was as close a game as we had all year, and we went on to win the national championship that year.
Hold on, Parker. Did the two players agree with you, or did they have a different opinion?
I don't
what did they
know.
Want to do?
One of them
did,
because we went ahead and
you went ahead.
Speaking of LSU, like close Alabama LSU games, wasn't there a game that LSU they beat Alabama 9-6, which or was it 12 or was it 12-6?
I'm not sure, Parker. I can't recall the scores of a lot of games now. I'm 66 years old.
A lot of Bama. Okay, and here's another thing. A lot of Bama fans seem to not like Gary Danielson because he doesn't say anything nice about Alabama. Do you have an opinion on Gary Danielson from CBS?
My wife and I JW and I were equipment managers in the USFL for the Michigan Panthers. And my wife and I would go watch the Lions play, and Gary Danielson was a quarterback.
You mean like CBS Gary Danielson?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I did not know.
He was a good quarterback. He was a passing quarterback. And we had a great time watching the Lions play, even though they were our competitors. But he frustrates all Alabama fans.
Oh yeah. So
he just seems like he roots against us.
So speaking of which, like earlier in the podcast episode I was talking about our trip to Bama. So
yes,
like there was this store that in Tuscaloosa called the Trunk, I think it is. And they had this button that said, "Shut up, Gary." And the lady and I asked what that all about, what that was all about. And the lady said that that Gary Danielson has nothing nice to say about Alabama. So, man.
Hey, I'll tell you a story. JW and I were at a game, and we saw Gary Danielson and the other guy, the one that retired.
Vern Lundquist.
And JW said, "Hey, there's Gary and Vern." He said, "Let's get our picture taken with them." So he asked them, and they said, "Oh, sure." And he jumps up there and has his picture taken with him. He said, "Now it's your turn." I said, "No, thank you."
Anyways, so you said you saw Gary Danielson play when he was with the Lions. Do you remember who the Lions were playing against in that game?
It was almost we'd go to three or four games a year. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, they would play. Who is it, Sharon? They played on Thanksgiving.
Sorry. Things might get a little bit loud in here because I have a dog. I have a service dog, and he loves to bark. Bless his little heart.
That's okay.
You can meet him after the podcast if you want.
Okay. That sounds great.
Okay. How long did you work for the Michigan Panthers of the USFL?
3.5 years.
Nice. Do you remember the name of their stadium?
It was the Silverdome.
Wait, you mean the Pontiac Silverdome?
The Pontiac Silverdome.
Oh, cool. And speaking of which, so back to Detroit. Do you remember the Bad Boys from back in the 1980s? The Detroit Pistons, like Bill Lambier, Dennis Rodman, yes. Rick Mahorn. Yeah.
Yeah. Then, all we had to do to watch a basketball game is walk through a little tunnel, and we were right there behind their bench. Oh, so we'd go down and watch them all the time.
Speaking of basketball, so this has nothing to do with the Pistons, but you know. So I don't know if you care about the NBA, but do you remember a man by the name of Johnny Most, who was the radio voice for the Boston Celtics? He was called the raspy radio voice of the Boston Celtics. Johnny Most. Do you know of him?
I've heard his name. And I've heard him on a broadcast.
He
was
known he hated the Pistons. Like this one, because like, oh my gosh, there's this video of him just like completely black, like he's just like trash talking the Pistons. But anyways, but that's not important. So when you worked for the Panthers, the Michigan Panthers, that is, the coach was Jim Stanley, who was one of the Texas A&M Junction boys. Did Mr. Stanley ever mention his career as a Junction? Did Mr. Stanley ever mention his time as a Texas A&M Junction boy?
Sure, we talked a lot about it. I would hear Coach Bryant, and I would hear about the Junction, but I didn't know what it was, and. D. Powell, the guy I worked for, was a player on that team. And Bobby Marks, who was another coach at Alabama, played on that team, and Coach Stanley, when I was trying to get the job at Michigan, I heard that Jim played at Texas. Now I called Coach Bryant, and Coach Bryant said he wasn't the best player I had, but he was dang sure the meanest. And he was a tough guy.
Because like
he
the
was
job,
very tough guy.
oh, go ahead. Like, oh, sorry. I was talking over you. So can you go ahead and say that over again? The last part there.
He's a very tough guy. He, Coach Bryant said he wasn't the best player he ever had, but he was the meanest.
So anyhow, yeah. So I was doing some research before the podcast, and it said the Junction Boys were like it was the name of the group that, quote, survived Mr. Bryant's camp a few years, like during that time.
That's right. And I remember Coach Bryant they had a reunion when I was a senior at Alabama. And I remember Coach Bryant being nervous about going out there and seeing all those players. But they honored him. They gave him so much honor when he went out there. He was in a great mood when he came back.
That's awesome.
And the book that was written about the Junction came out years later. But when I was with Michigan, the Michigan Panthers, Coach Stanley told us all about it. I mean, he got into detail telling us about it.
I know that nowadays Texas A&M has the Yell leaders, but did they have the Yell leaders back in the day, or did you not? Oh, you probably didn't go to Texas A&M.
I've gone to a ball game there. That's the best place that's the best place to go to a ball game.
How long ago was that?
A couple of years.
JW, did they have the Yell leaders back in the day? You know what I mean? You know those people it's kind of like, it's kind of like male, like it's kind of like a hype man, but the whole game through.
Right.
So
yeah, that's the 13th man is the fans and the Yell leaders and all that.
Okay, next question. Do you have a sporting event that is on your bucket list of sporting events to attend?
That I've been to?
No, that's on your bucket that like you haven't been to that you want to go to. Like the Super Bowl, the World Cup, like sporting event that you haven't been to that you want to go to.
I'd like to go where they let the bulls out and you have to run from the bulls.
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
El Toro Loco, right?
That's right.
No, El Toro Rapido. Right, Dad? Would you run from the bulls or would you run with the bulls? Would you chase the bulls or get chased by the bulls? What would you do?
Well, me and JW in our younger days, we'd probably tried to ride them, but nowadays we'd run from them.
Now you're just trying not to get trampled.
So what did you do after your time at the Michigan Panthers for the U.S. during your time with the Michigan Panthers of the USFL? Hold on. What did you do after your time with the Michigan Panthers of the USFL? What did you do?
Well, the moving truck had picked our furniture up, and there was nothing left in our apartment but I think a couch and a phone. And the phone rings, and the guy said, "This is Mouse Davis of Denver Gold, and my 18-wheeler with equipment and player and weight room and everything has just left for Los Angeles, and my equipment manager walked in here and resigned." And I thought it was a player playing a trick on me, and I hung up.
So you said his name was Mouse Davis?
Yes, Mouse Davis.
What's his full name? I mean, no, never mind.
Daryl Mouse Davis. He's known for to be the inventor of the run and shoot offense.
So Mouse was actually his actual middle name, or was that just a nickname?
It's a nickname.
Okay, sorry.
Because I'm 5'9", and I was about 9 inches taller than him.
So he was 5 foot, I assume.
About it. But he was a heck of a coach, and he designed the run and shoot, and June Jones was his assistant for a long time, and June was his quarterback at Portland State, and so was Neil Lomax.
Did you say Portland State, as in the Portland State Vikings?
That's right.
Believe you me, Mr. Ottie, I know a lot of mascots. Like, you can quiz me on a few after we're done with the episode.
Well, go back to that story though, Mr. Ottie. So you thought it was a joke by a player? How did you figure out that it was a real deal?
He called back, and Pete Rodriguez, who was a coach at Michigan, had gone to Denver, and he said, "Ottie, do not hang up." He said, "I've got Pete Rodriguez standing next to me that wants to talk to me." And Pete got on the phone and said, "Ottie, don't hang up. This is Pete Rodriguez." And he said, "This is a real deal." And I called Jay Shoup, the trainer, and I said, "Jay, I've just gotten an offer from Denver. They want to know what I want." And he said, "Ottie, they need somebody really, really bad." He said, "Whatever you want to make, whatever you need, double it." and
Wow.
So I called Mouse back, and he said, "How much money you need?" And I put it up high, and I said, "I need a car, and I need this, and I need that." And he said, let me call an owner. Let me call the owner, and I'll call you right back." And it wasn't 5 minutes. He called me back and said, "Can you be on a plane in 2 hours?" And I flew straight out to Los Angeles, met the 18-wheeler, and met all the players when they got there. And I was with the Denver Gold for 1 year.
What's the Denver? Are you talking about like a question? Like, are you talking about like is the Denver Gold a sports team or a minors group? Like,
it was a USFL team.
Oh.
Michigan merged with Oakland, and they kept all the Oakland staff. So none of us had a job anymore. So Denver called me, wanting to hire me as the equipment manager. And it was unique because I flew to Los Angeles. I didn't know a single player. I didn't know what the equipment, what it looked like or anything. And we practiced out in at Cal State Northridge. So, but it was a nice situation. I love June Jones. June could walk into what we're doing right now, and two things: you never would know that he was an NFL coach and the most successful coach in Hawaii history.
Yeah,
and he wouldn't have any socks on because he never wore socks.
Wow.
Okay, next question. Out of all your experience, what is the greatest one you've ever witnessed?
The 2 national championships at Alabama. 78 and 79.
Can I build on that? Like, is it so? Like, back to. Can we talk about Mr. Nick Saban for a minute?
Sure.
He did this thing where he built what they would call championship houses, like for anyone that was homeless in the area of anywhere of anywhere in any part of Alabama. Is that right? Is that right? He would call them championship houses. Is that right? Like houses for the homeless, I think.
I think so. I think some of his money went towards that endeavor.
Parker, let me ask. I want to ask a follow-up, Parker.
I had the honor of picking Nick Saban up at the airport 3 times. When we lived over in Georgia, we dealt with all the schools, and we would recertify their football helmets. And we
What
did
schools,
that
like the colleges? Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I'll ask
we
my
did
question when you're done.
colleges, but mostly high schools,
Hmm.
because there's a lot more high schools than there are colleges. But we
Yeah.
did Auburn, UAB, um, we did Hoover High School when
Go
they were having
Bucks!
Yeah.
when they had the little the show on
On
MTV.
Yeah.
And then we did 3/4 of the high schools in Georgia.
So you said you what did you do with the helmets? Refurbished them? What was the word you used?
Yeah, here, a lot of people don't know this, but helmets only last 10 years now. After 10 years, you have to throw them away. Every year, they have to be tested and recertified, and most of them get repainted. New masks get put on them. If you look at a helmet at the end of the year and you look at it at the beginning, it looks brand new at the beginning.
Very good. Any other stories you think our listeners would like to know?
Well, I could tell you a little bit about Coach Bryant. Coach
Sure.
Saban, I was able to pick Coach Saban up at the airport to take him to the Nike clinic. And he was almost like a machine. I mean, he was calling players that were in a hospital. He was calling recruits. He had something going all the time. And Coach Bryant was a real big guy. He was huge. And if he walked into a room, the room just got quiet. He commanded that much respect. But he would loosen his tie, order a bourbon and Coke. Johnny Walker Red is what he drank. But he would sit back and people would gather around him, and he would start telling stories. Wow. He was a very warm guy.
Nice.
Coach Saban, he's not like that. He could run the world's largest corporation.
I appreciate that story, because that was going to be my follow-up, sort of asking you to compare the two, but I think that's it right there. That's a great comparison. Very interesting to hear.
Okay, so on this podcast, we are all fanatics. So last question we ask. As a fan, what do you think is the all-time greatest moment in sports? Like, what do you think? Did you get all that? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I got it. I'm thinking. I think for me, the all-time best moment in sports is when Tua came in.
Oh yeah,
and threw that touchdown pass.
Can I give the?
I think to me that was the greatest moment in Alabama history.
Mind if I give you the call as called by Chris Fowler?
No, I don't.
Tagovailoa trying to make up for it, fires to the end zone, touchdown! Alabama wins.
Sounds just like it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ottie or Ottie. Sorry.
Hey, anytime.
Yeah, we appreciate your time. This has been awesome.
Yeah,
I've really enjoyed this. I took a class in television broadcasting. I took 1 or 2 classes at Alabama because everybody kept saying, you'd be a great sportscaster. I couldn't stand to be in front of a camera. I don't know why. I just didn't like being in front of a camera. But you do a great job.
Ottie, one more thing. So, would you mind sharing this episode with people that you know and like that are connected to the sports world, so they can be on an episode? That's what I like to do here. Like that's what I like to ask my guests when we wrap up, if they would share it with anyone they know in the sports world. So I figured, would you mind doing that?
Yeah, I told JW I had two good friends at Alabama, two good friends that were players. Steve Whitman, who was the fullback, and Randy Scott, who was the linebacker. Randy went on and played for the Green Bay Packers for 7 years. And Steve went to the San Diego Chargers and hurt his leg and never played. But they were two really great football players at Alabama. So hopefully I could get both of them on your show.
Thank you.
That would be awesome.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ottie.
That's my. I put my letter blanket. I was going to show you some. I don't know if you can see it. I put my letter blanket.
It is.
Yeah, the A. You know, that kind of reminds me of the Arkansas A a little bit. No,
yeah. I'll tell you a story.
Okay.
When back in the 80s, All American was the big reconditioning company, and they were doing all the colleges and most of the high schools in the United States. And Alabama didn't paint their helmets, and Arkansas painted their helmets, and USC painted their helmets, but they were all close to the Alabama color. Anyway, they all complained about their color. And one time they got mixed up and sent USC's to Alabama, Arkansas.
So they had the USC
and Alabama's
there were no
to
logos
Arkansas,
on
and
yet,
every
Parker.
one of them was happy.
So is that why nowadays they use, like, for teams that have this, for teams that have the same color combinations, like for teams like Syracuse and Auburn that have orange and blue, each team uses a different shade of each color to avoid confusion between the two schools?
Well, all helmets used to be. They used to not want to paint helmets if they didn't have to, and back in the 80s and 70s, you would see schools where their helmet, like Ole Miss, didn't quite match their uniform. And then a new paint came out in the late 90s called Sickens paint. And it was a paint used on race cars and motorcycles. And they could match any color of cloth. And then all these universities started having a unique color. And it was only unique to that university.
Nice.
That is very cool.
So I guess, Dad, question. Dad, is that right? Nowadays, these teams use different shades to avoid confusion between other schools that have their same colors?
I think it's what he's saying. They have a unique color because they are able to match that paint to their jersey color or to whatever color they want. So that's why it happens. Well, I think, Parker, it's time for us to wrap it up. This has been absolutely incredible. So many great stories, so many awesome experiences. Thank you for your time. This has been awesome.
Thank you, Mr. Ottie.
Well, I've heard a lot about y'all from JW, and it was nice meeting you, and I hope we can meet again. And anytime y'all need me on your show, just let me know.
All right, Fanatics. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of The Fan and Fanatic. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for all of your support. Don't forget to follow or subscribe, or whatever your podcast app says to do. And you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. For my broadcast partner, Ryan Grelecki, this is Parker Grelecki saying, Game, Set, Match!